Hi, I'm Janelle Olivier. I'm a Common Core Cluster Support Teacher at the district office. I'm here with Dina Burrow and Jessica Madonia and Jared Martin, who's one of our teachers at Sarah High School. Dina, Jessica, and I are Common Core Cluster Support Teachers. And I've been teaching a few lessons in Jared's class over the last few days, and we're looking at planning one of the next days coming up. Jared, can you tell us a little bit about your students, please?
Sure. So I have an integrated freshman class, with 34 to 36 students in there. Good students, really good students. They enjoy talking, they work well together. I have them split up strategically between 9 different groups where I put, each group has at least one really good student who's good at math and is also a good leader.
Okay.
And then the other ones are dispersed in between, like in different ways. So I have a couple EL students, a couple reclassified EL students, couple IEPs, and then I have a bunch of students who are not necessarily classified, but definitely struggle with their math.
Okay. So we've been working in Chapter 5 so far, and overall for the unit has 3 investigations. The first investigation that we've been working on is around the idea of functions. And the second one, we focus a little bit more on exponents, and exponent rules and scientific notation, and the third gets into actual exponential functions, so kind of tying in all of that together. So looking at investigation 5A, the very first thing that we always need to do walking into these investigations and kind of looking at them as one lesson that we might do over several days is to identify that core math idea. So what we want the students to understand, not just do.
Okay. The book also points out that what the students should know by the end of the 5A investigation would be build a function from a word problem, determine whether a relationship is a function based on its description or graph, make input-output tables, find the domain of a function, and graph a function.
So that's what we want them to be able to do.
That's what the book says that they should be able to do after this section.
And according to the standards, we're looking at the functions and interpreting functions. So that first standard states, understand that a function from one set, called the domain, to another set, called the range, assigns to each element of the domain exactly one element of the range. If f is a function and x is an element of its domain, then f of x denotes the output of f corresponding to the input of x.
So I see that as like there's some specific vocabulary in there, there's the notation in terms of f of x and what that represents and how we would graph that. But what would you say the core math idea is of what we want them to understand that would meet this standard and that they would get from completing this investigation?
Just after this investigation, I would say if they just knew that one input produced exactly one output instead of going to multiple outputs, would be a good core value to
Yeah, absolutely, because that's an understanding, because kids can go through a lot of procedures and they can do a lot in here, but do they really understand that for a function that for every input there's only one output that I can get out. If I put in 1, I can't get out 5, and then the other time get out 11. I can only get out one value. So that's what we're really honing in on this first investigation. And so far, what we did, we're doing it over about 4 days. So we've had it 2 days so far. The first day we did that yarn activity. I wanted to kind of just see how the kids problem solve together.
Right.
We played the guess my number or guess my rule game where the kids gave me an input and output, and I did something to it and kind of started gradually, gave them opportunities to write while they were doing that, explain how they thought about coming up with the rule, not just what my rule was, and they had a lot of think, pair, share time. We then moved on to them playing that game with their partners and trying to guess each other's rules. We assigned them the rules, and we kind of ended on this idea of like what makes a rule fair. So we posed some of those Tony Sasha problems from the book, and so gave a lot of math practice 3, kind of critiquing the reasoning of others. So Tony says that the rule's not fair, and the kids got time to think about that, paired up with their partner, we had a class discussion. Then we formalized that definition of function, that those rules were, that are fair are really functions, that every input can only give one output. It's not fair if I can give you different ones. So where we're moving on to now is in kind of building some context and the kids creating their own function. So in the book it has this problem involving purchasing CDs online, and I don't know about you guys, but I haven't purchased a CD online forever.
I don't think kids know what a CD
No, they
is.
don't, they don't. So I was thinking that we could modify this a little bit. So what I typed up, since we're doing this around the holidays, is I made it a Cyber Monday problem, buying scarves. And I made a few changes. Let you guys read the problem in a minute, but a few changes just so you know. The book had a 28% discount, and I think that's lame too. Like, no one has a 28% discount. Plus, having 28, it's just going to make it a tedious problem. We're not focusing on the percents necessarily here. We're focusing on functions. So I changed that to 30%. I also, again, changed it from CDs to scarves. And I changed some of the prices so that 2 of the prices would be the same, so we could have that conversation about, if I have the same input, I should get the same output. So I want to see if any kids will, on their own, come up with like the price without actually calculating it and just go, oh, it's $12.98. That's what we had before.
So looking for patterns.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
okay.
and understanding that this must be a function that if I put in one price, I should get the same price out. So what I noticed, I typed it up, so I'll definitely want to give the kids a handout of the problem, some of the reading strategies too that support all of our learners, is give them an opportunity to just read the problem first on their own. We can project it on the Promethean board, highlight it as a class then what they think are the important parts of the problem, make sure that just the kids have an understanding of what the problem is before they move on and work on it. So just taking that time to let them read it alone, go over it and have a little private think time at that point. And then we can have some, partner time to actually work on it, and we'll have a whole class discussion.
Would you read it aloud after they read it, just to make sure everybody
Yeah, definitely.
understood?
So I'll have them read it on their own. They can do any annotations that they see. I'll read it out loud to the class, and then have, after that, then ask them what they think is important and annotate and highlight. So why don't we take a minute right now to actually look at the problem, do the problem, maybe at least for the infinity scarf at the top, so then we can kind of anticipate what we think the kids will do on there.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, are we gonna let them have calculators?
I think we should let the kids use calculators. They're going to be able to use it on their Smarter Balanced Assessment as well. So.
Well, and the purpose is not to get bogged down
Yeah, it's
on
not
this
about-
math, right? It's
Right.
to see if we can look for patterns.
Yeah.
And, okay,
I'm looking at
When it comes up during the class time.
right. Okay.
So if they round as they're going along, they'll end up with 1635. If they do all of the calculations at one time, if they are even at a place mathematically where they can do that, which I find probably not going to happen, but if they did, then they'd end up with 1636. So I'll just be prepared to deal with that conversation.
Okay.
So what other things do we anticipate them doing, or any
I'm
errors
worried
in that?
about the tax, the 8%, then
Okay.
putting in 0.8.
Yes.
Multiplying by 0.8 instead of 0.08. I think we have to just be aware when we're walking around.
Yeah.
I think something that has come up in the past with my students is where to put that discount and where to put the tax. Do you put the discount before the tax or after the tax?
Right.
Right.
And I think that
And-
will go to with the shipping fee as well.
Well, and in the actual problem, there is a hint here in parentheses that says the tax is after the discount.
I think where's the shipping? Where do they put that shipping fee? Because do they add it on to the $18.99 in the beginning, or do they take it
Oh,
after discount after tax? Because then that shifts the answer.
That'll definitely change things, because if they end up taxing that shipping, then they'll be paying more tax than if they were just taxing the
Right.
So this is, we've talked a lot about the NCTM 5 practices in our PDs and out at site. So the 5 practices, that's our anticipating. The next step for me then is monitoring and looking for what the kids are doing while they're working with their partners. And so I'll look for all of those things. And then I'm going to select some students to come to the board, and I want to select and sequence them in a particular order. I don't want to pick the right kid to start with, or the 100% right group.
Stop the whole class.
Yeah, we're done.
right,
And
but
then
when you
so
say
then
you're
all
picking a
set-
kid, you mean a group
a
is
group.
coming up.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. But I don't want, so I want to make sure that whoever I pick to come up, that it's going to be one of these things where common errors. So I'll look for a group that's maybe making one of the errors that other groups are making, and I want to address it. So I'll call them up, and then it'll also give us a good opportunity to have a lot of that discussion as a class, and give them a chance to repeat each other's, thinking. I want the focus to be on the thinking during that discussion part and what, why they were doing things in a particular way, not just is it right or is it wrong.
So can I clarify, you are gonna on purpose pick people who made mistakes?
Yes,
To stir the conversation with the groups?
Yes.
Okay.
That goes into that,
Looking for common mistakes.
Yes.
that math practice standard 3 of
Yeah.
critiquing,
Right.
reasoning of others and analyzing their work.
yes,
Right.
yeah.
And making them all comfortable, it's okay to have the wrong answer at the board, because we're a team.
We're in
building
this
that
together, and I'll
community.
have the chairs turned like a little audience, so
Mhm.
everybody, pencils down, we're just focusing on the thinking, kind of all in this together.
Mhm. Wonderful.
So after that kind of public debate time, and we kind of just finalize what this, how we get to this calculation, the kids are gonna notice that this was extremely tedious. This is gonna take some time, so we'll work on this infinity scarf like to start with, and just kind of at that point see where they're at. But I know they're not gonna wanna do that over and over and over again for this, so I'm gonna put that out there, like, gosh, there's gotta be a better way we can do this and kind of necessitate a use of a function here. So, one of the questions that I put on here to throw up on the Promethean board is, what is a rule that we can use to calculate the cost of the scarf purchased online? So, give the kids some private think time to write a function in terms of x, and I'll tell them, come up with any name you want for your function, but x is the input, x is the price of the scarf. So what kind of general equation could I write? So let's think about what the kids might come up with at this time, and what we hope that kind of end goal would be.
Okay.
So we want it to be, this is real world context, but can we apply what we've learned about those rules and functions, versus this just calculations over here on the side of my paper.
Mhm.
So it's bringing in the properties and order of operations
Yeah.
to make that equation.
Yeah, they're definitely gonna need that.
But we're gonna accept a whole bunch of different
Yeah.
equations, regardless if they're simplified
Right.
or
Yeah.
not, right? As
So
long
we
as
would
it's
hope-
equivalent. Yes,
As long as
okay.
they're equivalent.
Okay.
We might have a kid too in, doing that 1899 that might already think about 30% off being paying 70%. So they might multiply by 0.7 and have those two calculations wrapped up into one versus doing 30 and having to subtract it.
And
So
that would be incredible.
that would be awesome.
And so I'm curious to
maybe,
see if
yeah.
we get anybody who does that.
And hopefully we'll have somebody too that might do that same, if they have that kind of knowledge there, they might apply that for the tax too. Instead of just doing. The kids might do on this one.
The tax and the discount, putting it in the right decimal form.
Okay,
Um,
again, and
Well,
then.
maybe just listing it all out instead of, just like exactly how they were doing
Yeah.
it, just listing
yeah.
exactly what they were doing as their equation.
Yeah, like maybe an X minus and then just all the numbers, but not actually doing those operations to X.
Right.
Okay, so we can look for those two. So I think I'll kind of go through that same process again, I know what they're gonna be looking for, give them private think time, give them time to talk with their partner, and then I wanna call like multiple kids to the board this time, and so we can kind of compare all of them, cause there are so many different equations, so, pick some that did, unique things that are correct, pick a few that are, incorrect maybe, so then we can have that conversation as a class, like, are we okay with
But,
these?
so you're still walking around monitoring and you're on purpose picking
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah,
students
so
that are
we're
gonna
gonna,
come
those
up.
5 practices will go through again, so I'll
So,
very
okay.
carefully monitor and select and sequence who I'm gonna have go up there. I like to volunteer.
Okay.
There's no volunteering, I'm volunteering you. So then from here, so everything has been concept lessons so far, so we haven't really necessarily formalized a lot at this point. The kids have an understanding, I think, now of what a function is and what makes these rules fair and the input and output. But we're gonna need to do a generalizing lesson to kind of formalize it all, put a lot of that notation, put a lot of that vocabulary with domain and range, give them a chance to do some problems, but again, for that, the purpose of those notes is not like, let me do an example and you guys like watch me and write it down.
Right.
I'll do the Cornell notes, I'll give them copies of it, but it's gonna be them working with their partners and solving those problems and doing those examples and us having a discussion at the board,
So when you're making those notes, so you're leaving space.
Oh, yeah,
So it's just
yeah.
the copy
So I'll
stuff.
fill in the left-hand side
There
that
we
has
go,
the
okay.
problems, it's got like the name of the word, and then the right side will fill in
Just-
together,
okay.
like the solutions and the, vocabulary and all that. What else should we do to kind of put a bow on this one?
We could throw in an exit slip at the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice easy exit slip. I was thinking something to get them to write a little bit more, make it a very general question, not a very precise.
Okay.
And then because we want, like our core value, or our core item is
It's a value.
to get, you know, have
Value.
each input have only one output, you know, give us an example of maybe one that is not a function.
Okay.
Something that
See.
is not a function, to see that they truly understand that.
So maybe we could do like the first question, like tell me everything you know about functions kind of thing, and C, and what would we hope at bare minimum they write down?
Well, I'm hoping, I love the writing part, because I don't think they write enough and explain their reasoning, so I think that's a really good way to start
them to
that,
write.
yeah.
Just knowing that input and output.
Yeah.
And then it'll also bring up some ideas of what the kids know about domain and range if
Yeah.
it comes up.
And C.
From previous knowledge, prior knowledge.
So, and then ask them to maybe make a table to show, like, you know, give me an example that's
Mhm.
not a
There you go.
function, and that'll kind of solidify, I think, between those two things. So we have a concrete example plus their kind of
Mhm.
definition that they've come up with.
Mhm.
And then we can take a look at that and see where we're going. So this is one investigation in the whole unit. So this will give you some good information on where you need to go from here.
Definitely.
Mhm.
All right. I'm
Sounds great.
excited to get in there again. So excited. All right, so what I want you to do right now is read through this problem by yourself. I want you to circle, highlight, underline, anything you feel is important in this problem in your first read. We're going to talk about it. Don't start working on it yet. I just want you to read the problem to yourself. Go. Reading the problem, just look up here so I know we're done. I want to have everybody have enough time to fully read the whole problem. Read the problem by yourself. Let's read through it once as a class. We're going to talk about what's important in this problem, what do we understand, what is the problem asking us to do, etc. Alright, so it says, Miss Olivier always buys scarves as holiday presents for the girls in her family. On Cyber Monday, she went on to New York and Company's website and saw they were having a 30% off sale. Okay, so, what information in this problem is important? What's important? That there's a 30% off sale. So 30% off, we want to make sure that we highlight this. Sale, right? That's important for us. If I'm going to buy them online, I'm going to get 30% off. What else is important? So paying a $2 shipping fee, also important. That's going to come into play in my final cost, right? What else is important? 8% tax. So I'm going to have to pay 8% tax. After discount's important too, right? We're not paying 8% on the original price of the scarf. It's after we've done the discount we're gonna pay 8%, okay? Anything else? Only for online purchases. So I'm only getting that 30% off if I buy it online. Do you see my predicament? Your job right now, all I want you to do, let's kind of play around with this a little bit and look at the first couple rows in the table. So we'll start with this infinity scarf that's $18.99. So I have to think about all three of those things and figure out how much is my credit card going to be billed for this one scarf, for this online cost. Go ahead and work with your partner next to you. See if you guys can put your heads together and come up with how you will figure out that online cost for the scarf. Yeah, calculators are there for you. That's why you got them. So what would we start with? So we have $18.99. So the shipping's gonna be at the very end, right?
But it'd still be the same either way.
Either way, I'm gonna have to add 2, but am I adding that to $18.99?
Do you round up?
With the, yes, yeah, you're right, you look at the third. So that's, the 13.29 represents the price after your discount, okay? So 8%, how do I write that as a decimal? 0.08, okay. What are we doing first? What's your first calculation? You guys are typing away there, but I don't see anything on your paper. So. Okay.
And then whatever number we got out of that, which was 5.697, and we divided that by 5.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
and then we added $2 for the and then we got 2.70
Okay.
Serious.
All right.
That's how you do it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, is my shipping fee gonna be before tax or after tax? After tax. If you've done any online shopping, your tax will be calculated and it'll give you that dollar amount, and then it goes like +2 for your shipping fee. Your shipping fee will end up being after you do your tax. That's fine. That's fine for me as well. So explain to me what you did here with this.
How much 30% of $18.99 was $5, so then I subtracted $5 on the rate to find out how much it would cost us.
Okay, so this is your price after 30.
Yeah.
Okay, then what do we do?
And I brought it over here and I added the 8% tax.
Okay.
$14.35, and then I added the $2 shipping.
$16.35. All right, awesome. I love this that you did. I haven't seen anybody else in the class do this yet.
That's how my mom makes me do it.
What type of? Do you know what this is called? This type of equation and proportion. Yeah. So it's an easy way instead of having to deal with the decimals in there to deal with those percents. I like it. I think that's fabulous. Can I call you up to show me this?
You can take that up.
Come on, you help me out, right? All right. Thanks.
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna give you about 1 more minute to just finish at least the online cost, and I'm gonna call some people up to the board to share with us what they did to calculate online cost. All right, regardless of where you are, I would like you to put your pencils down. I would like you to physically turn your chair towards the front like you're an audience. Because I'm gonna call some people up to the board and I want them to be fully focused. So go ahead and kind of turn a little bit, pencils down. All right. I'm gonna open it up to volunteers here. There's a couple people that I'm gonna call up for sure that I want them to show their way, but would anybody like to volunteer to walk us through how they got that online cost? Maybe somebody from the middle back table there.
Kevin?
In fact, you know what? Whole group, come on up. Everybody. You guys get it. You got this. You got this. No man is an island. We're all gonna be up here. First of all, let's give him some props for coming up as a whole group. Just getting up here. That's awesome. Okay. So I want you to walk through what you guys did with your $18.99.
Well, first we multiplied 18.99 by 0.3.
Do you need your paper?
It was the 30% off.
So right now we're just concentrating on their thinking. Just ready for some questions, comments, and concerns, okay? So $16.51 for your online cost. All right, before we talk about whether we like it or not, or if we have a question, a comment, or concern, do we understand what they did?
Yeah.
All right, so that's our main focus, right? Do we understand what they did? Okay, so somebody walk me through, restate what their thinking was to get to that $16.51. Okay, so Gabe, right? All right, Gabe, nice and loud for all of us. Can you restate what they did?
They did the 30%, then they added the $2, and then they did the tax.
So they did 30% first, which gave them $5.70 off. Put that in to get a price, then did the $2, then did the 8%. Are we clear on what they did?
Yep.
All right, so now let's open it up for if anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns about what they did. You guys have the floor, so you call on whoever you want.
Yes. Aren't you supposed to do the shipping cost after the tax? Like do the 30%, then the tax, then add the $2.
Okay, so let's put that back to the room.
Oh yeah.
So she's making the claim that she thinks that they should have done the $2 after. Anybody agree, disagree with that?
I agree.
You agree. Raise your hand if you guys did the $2 at the very end. You did 8% first? All right, so those of you at the front, are you okay with what they're thinking of why they would do that?
Yeah, it makes sense now.
It makes sense now. Okay, so I don't want you to erase anything, so I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this. I'm gonna give you guys a chance to fix it. Let me see. Awesome. Okay. So over here now, they're saying that this. Are we cool with this first step for them?
Yeah.
We're cool with this. We're cool with 570.
Yeah.
All right, but you want. Then, towards the end of class yesterday, we were focusing just on this first infinity scarf that was $18.99 and trying to figure out exactly what the cost would be for us to buy it online with all those three things, with the discount, with the tax, and the shipping fee. And I'm gonna call you guys back up so we can wrap up our conversation from yesterday. All right, so to recap their thinking, does anybody remember what it was they were doing yesterday on this problem? By the way, if you could turn your chairs forward a little bit so we can get back to our audience mode having a conversation. So could somebody recap for me what they had done before class ended yesterday? You could, sure, go ahead.
Well, we were talking about how we did the shipping fee before we did the tax, so the price would be wrong.
Okay, so we were all kind of talking about how that might be incorrect. And so you wanted to make what change for your calculations?
We wanted to do the tax after we did the 30% off.
Okay, so now you're saying 1635?
Yep.
All right. Do we agree, disagree? Any questions, comments, or concerns with what they did up there?
Yeah.
Would you actually calculate the tax for the original price and not for the discounted price?
Wait.
I don't know.
Okay, class conversation. So, where do we put in that tax? Is it on the discounted price or is it on the original price?
It's on the,
You guys, before you call who you want.
it's on the discounted price because on the paper it says tax of 8% after discount.
Tax of 8% after discount. Okay, so we're good with the 8% there on the 1329. All right. Is there anything up there that we are concerned about? We're good. You sure? Okay. So let's move on. Thank you. Give them a round of applause for coming up again. I want to see if you guys can write for me an expression that I could use for a scarf that is X dollars. So what rule can we use? So first of all, is this a function that we're going to be making or not? What makes it a function?
Same rules.
Same rule every time. If I went into the store and bought that $18.99 scarf and my friend went in and bought the same one, would we be paying the same amount? If we went online, we'd be paying the same amount, right? There's no confusion there. I'm not going to buy a scarf and have different people paying different prices for it if I'm going through the same rules. But I would like you to make up a function for me where X is our input. So think of X as that $18.99 and what you had to do to it before. So I'm going to let you kind of work through this a little bit on your own first with those calculations. And then I'll let you talk with your partner and we'll talk about it as a class. So if X was the price of my scarf, go through everything that you did before and see if you can write one equation for me. All right, I'm feeling that urge to share. Most of you have something down on your paper right now. You go ahead and turn to your partner and share what you have so far. If you don't have anything yet because you're still kind of mulling it over, then put your heads together and see if you can finalize something together.
You gotta take away 30%. You have to get your price of the scarf, then you gotta take away 30% for the discount. Then you gotta add the 8% tax after the discount, and then you gotta add the $2 shipping fee for online.
Expressions. So I'm going to call up a few different people. I want their expressions written up here, and then we're going to kind of look at all of them together and see if there's any that are perfect, if there's any that, if there's things that look the same on both of them, and we will kind of come to consensus as a class on one function. You want to come up and do one? Okay, you come up and write one. So I want you to stay up here, okay? Need a couple more. So we got Nala's up there, and then I'll have both of you come up. Okay, so you guys can both go up and one right, then the next person right. thank you. So we've got Nala
Yeah.
and Tim. All right, so I want you to look at all three of these. I want you to see, first of all, do you understand maybe what calculations represent what part of that discount, tax, and the shipping? Are there any that are 100% correct? Are there any that you have issues with? So just kind of look at them overall. Give you about a minute or so to look at these. So take a few minutes right now to complete your table using this cost function for the online price. We're not going to worry about. All right, ladies and gentlemen, check your table up here with mine very quickly. KP, right? You did something on your table that was pretty interesting. When I walked by, you hadn't done this one yet, but you already had it filled in, this one filled in. How did you do that?
The rule that we came up with earlier, each input can only have one output.
Okay, so stand on that.
Like yesterday or the day before that. Because they're the same number.
Oh, because these are the same. How many of you caught that? That they're the same, right? So like, oh, why am I doing this? This is a function. I know if I put this in, I'm going to get the same thing out. Why would I waste my time calculating? I'm just going to go ahead and write 1181 all the way in there. All right, awesome. All right, so we're going to go over some data today for the exit slip from the lesson that we did over the 4 days. So there were 30 students that did the exit slip, and this is one of our formative assessments. I did a lot of monitoring during and kind of checking for understanding and seeing where the kids were and made a lot of adjustments throughout the lesson, but this is another way that I could kind of see in writing each individual student what they really understood so far. So the first question was write down everything you understand about functions. And the kids did awesome. Out of the 30, there were only 5 that didn't write anything around that core math idea, that didn't include the idea that every input can only have one output.
So looking at the data that you received from the exit slip, what would you do to differentiate your instruction in order to support these 5 students who weren't able to get that core math idea of the input-output function?
I think I would just re-mention it up at front from the front of the room, but then also as I was walking around the room, I would make sure I hit each one of these students and worked on that idea with them.
This was a very open question, just like write everything you understand about functions. And that was the main thing that we were looking for, but there were some other things that kids did put down in addition. Some wrote about notation, and there was only 6 kids that mentioned very specifically like domain and range. And so we want to make sure that the kids understand that too. So I would possibly maybe in a warm-up or something kind of put that question out there again and be able to have a whole class conversation. Because whenever,
I'm planning on doing the whole class with that. I think also in the next section it reiterates the domain and range, and so we'll go into that again.
Okay, yeah.
I think that comes up too in the next question that was asked on if it is a function or not a function by looking at the table. I know there were 2 students that kind of misunderstood that part of it. So how are these students going to be supported in your re-engagement lesson?
Possibly with these 2 students, it could have just been a misread of the question. They're both good students, and so I would just make sure that I walked around and I would talk to each one of them individually, not single them out, but definitely reiterate that are they understanding what a function is in the one input and one output.
Yeah, because this in number 2, they were asked to give an example of an input-output table that's not a function, and they were the only 2 that their tables actually did represent functions. But I thought it was interesting if we go back and look at their number 1s. the response to number one, that the first student did actually say one input can't have two or more outputs. So he understands the core math idea. He might just, like I said, either misunderstood the problem and maybe was like, I'll give you an example, one that is a function, and didn't realize that he was supposed to give one that's not. So definitely just checking in and making sure that he's clear on that. And like Jessica said, that idea of re-engagement, it's not remediation, we're just re-engaging them with that content again so that we can better assess them and make changes in our instruction as needed. The only other thing that came up was in question number 3, I kind of just very specifically, because I was trying to use different strategies with the class, said what did Miss Olivier do over the last 4 days of class that helped you learn? And 12 of the 30 students did mention that they enjoyed and that it was helpful for them to be able to talk and work with partners. And I know you already have your room set up with groups. So how do you think you could maybe re-engage them with a lot more of that conversation, that collaborative conversation?
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to use the conversation. I like to have them work together. And going back to these students, I can pair them up with someone who could actually maybe explain it in a different way that me or you didn't get through to them. And
Yeah.
so-
Great idea.
But if they're sitting in that group, and they're really solving a problem together and really collaborating on it, not just working kind of side by side on stuff, but actually putting their heads together to solve. Because that scarf problem was difficult and they struggled, and I know that we would think 9th graders would be a lot better with percents and decimals at this point, but it's something that I think even adults forever still struggle with. But having somebody next to them to kind of work through and talk about it together was helpful for them as well. So I'd encourage you to bring in as many of those kind of task problems that, and we give a lot of them out at the PDs too, but to try to engage the kids and get them to collaborate together to solve problems. So overall, our next steps then, so this was kind of wrapping up that first investigation, chapter 5. So you mentioned that you're planning on kind of doing some warm-ups, re-engaging with this idea of everything they know about functions, especially coming back from winter break. They're going to need some time with that. And then checking in with these specific students overall as well to just recheck for their understanding to make sure that it's solidified before you get to that chapter assessment, so you can make adjustments along the way. Well, thank you very much for letting us come in and invade your class for 4 or 5 days. We appreciate it. It was fabulous getting back in and working with the students, and we look forward to seeing what else you have going on the rest of the year.
All right.